Planting of trees is generally seen as benefiting the environment. Whilst this is sometimes the case, it really does depend upon how, where, and what trees are actually being planted. These attempts at forestation can be broadly divided into two separate categories: reforestation or afforestation. Understanding the difference between the two is a key part in the process of making the practice of planting new trees actually work. The other major concern is what the intended benefit from planting the trees is supposed to bring, since not all elements of the environment will benefit from a specific planting program. So starting from the definitions of forestation. Reforestation is the planting of trees in an area which used to be covered in trees, but they've been since cut down, burnt, or otherwise removed. Whereas afforestation is the planting of trees where there was no existing woodland, or at least hasn't been wooded for a considerable amount of time. This means that afforestation is going to face additional problems unless the reasons why there was no previous woodland have been taken into account before the planting actually starts. Even reforestation can face similar problems, since some of the fundamental requirements of the new trees may have been removed with the original trees. First, most obvious requirement of tree planting is soil depth. Most trees require deep soil, so anchor the roots, support the tree, extract moisture and nutrients from the soil around the tree. Without this depth of soil, the growth of the trees can be stunted or even result in the death of the trees before they reach maturity. The reason for lack of soil depth is generally because there was little soil in the first place, or more likely, loss of soil through erosion. The process of soil erosion is important, since one of the main reasons for planting of trees is to prevent or reverse that very same soil erosion. Trees help prevent soil erosion by binding together soil, protecting the top layer of soil from the direct impact of rain or some of the effects of wind. Erosion not only affects the depth of the soil directly, but it also does so indirectly, as the top layer of soil, which is richest in nutrients needed for plant growth, is removed. Lower layers of soil are then exposed. These can't support the quality of plant life needed to hold the soil together, making the soil vulnerable to further erosion. Other ways the soil can become eroded is through overgrazing, again removing the plants holding the soil together, or alternatively ploughing the farmland too often, or too deep, or even farming down a slope rather than across it, and all lead to soil loss. To counter the lack of soil depth, a two-stage process of forestation may actually be required, where small bushes or shrubs are planted first to protect the soil before larger trees are planted later. This actually reflects the natural process by which forests are normally created in the first place. Another factor affecting the success of any major tree planting process is water. Trees require huge amounts of water to grow and develop, whilst tree roots may themselves enable the soil to hold onto an increased amount of water. The amount of water available is critical to the success or failure of a tree planting project. Trees can actually access the water in several different ways. They can capture the water that falls directly around them, or they can capture the water flowing past them through the soil. Alternatively, roots can actually reach down into the water table and directly access the water they need. Different ways of obtaining water can have an impact on the local environment. First two methods of holding onto the water around the trees can mean that there's less water available for other plants, which in turn can lead to sparse undergrowth around the trees. However, it can also mean that the trees also prevent or minimise flooding events, landslides and soil erosion by binding together soil, limiting the damage done by excess water. If, however, the trees are tapping into the water table, they can lower that general water level. This can mean that the plants with smaller roots are now unable to access the water and they may die out. It can also mean that the soil above the water table now becomes drier, more likely to suffer from wind erosion, result in the loss of the most important topsoil. Now drier and poorer soil can also present problems for the trees themselves, that new tree seedlings are now unable to access enough water to develop to mature trees. So by depleting the water table, trees may end up by creating desert-like conditions in the area they're being planted in. As well as issues with water, another factor that has to be considered is what the trees are planted and when. Now, many areas are deliberately planted, doing so that the wood can be harvested at a later date. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with this, and it can save other forests from being harvested for wood. However, often in order to control the type of wood produced, trees in a particular area are generally all of the same type, also planted at the same time. This combination can be problematic for the environment. Monocultures of any farm plant can have a negative effect on local wildlife, but the areas covered by woodland can be huge. When this is combined with a stand of trees all being the same age and planted close together, can cause additional problems. Now, woodlands have the potential to support a diverse population of plants and animals. However, ideally these need the space between each of the trees, and trees of different ages and species to be present if a varied ecosystem is to develop around the trees. Unfortunately, many commercially grown woodlands don't have this. The result, they tend to be virtually devoid of other life other than the trees themselves. There are some other less well-known issues that can develop with commercial tree growing. Much of the commercially grown woodland is of pine trees. These are relatively fast-growing and can generate a good return on the land. However, some of these trees actually have high levels of calcium in the leaves, like Scots pine, Douglas fir, larch, and also the Austrian pine, increase the acidity of the soil around them, and this acid then run off into the surrounding countryside, negatively affecting the local environment. Additionally, some pine needles themselves are toxic and can poison the local wildlife, or even farm life like cows. Finally, there's a major issue when it comes to harvesting the trees. So all the trees are generally planted at the same time. They also mature and are ready for harvesting at the same time. This can result in a wide area of previously forested land being cut down at the same time. Whilst this is fairly unsightly, it can also have a real big negative impact on the environment. Putting all this together means that whilst a program of tree planting can be beneficial to the environment, great care needs to be taken to ensure that factors are considered before planting actually takes place.